I know it's been quite some time since we last updated the channel, and I'm really sorry for that. Hopefully in 2026, we're going to move towards once a month updates. I promise we're going to really try on that one. Let me know what you'd like us to talk about down there in the comment section. Today, we're going to be covering our off-grid experience over the last 6 years and the important changes that we're making in 2026, because there's some big ones that are happening now. Let's talk about the solar array itself first here. We have 14.8 kilowatts of installed solar capacity. Now, that is nameplate capacity. In the real world, we get about 11 kilowatts maximum out of these panels. And there has definitely been some degradation over the last 6 years. You would expect the panels to wear over time, and that has definitely happened. You'll notice over here we have some discoloration in some of these panels. These are REC split cell panels. This does not actually seem to cause any power output issues, although it is kind of a cosmetic defect, I guess you could say. But overall, the panels have held up pretty well. When we got these panels, we made sure and bought a whole bunch of spares, because that redwood tree right up there, when the wind starts really howling at, around 60 miles an hour, which it can definitely do over time, it can drop some serious branches on these panels. And we've actually broken a few. You can see right here that this support right here is actually bent and it's no longer connected to the panels. That was due to a branch fall. And when we're talking about redwood trees that are easily over 200 years old, we're not talking little baby branches coming down from the tree. Now, you'll notice that these arrays are not quite symmetrical, and that's because after we installed them, we realized we needed a bit more power. And so we added on to this side and added some extra panels over there. We also nearly doubled the size of this array after we installed it. This one points west, whereas the other one points more or less south. That's because we realized we needed to be able to capture more afternoon sun, whereas this other array really stops doing its business around 1 p.m. or so in the summer. So we really needed that ability to extend our solar day. There's some pretty big changes happening up the hill, so let's go ahead and hike up the hill while we talk about production and consumption numbers over the last 6 years. As you can see on the chart on your screen, consumption has definitely been on a pretty strong increase, with 2025 coming in at 18.6 megawatt hours of consumption. 2024 was a pretty reasonable year. 2023 was very mild in the summer, so we didn't use quite as much power then. The bigger problem for us, though, really seems to be our winter consumption going up. This year, we used 1.63 megawatt hours in December versus 1.2 megawatt hours in December 2020. The problem, of course, is that December is when we're not producing a whole lot of solar power. So we've done a few things to try and address that, and a few more things are coming up soon. Up in the electrical shed, very little has changed. We still have the Schneider XW Pro inverters, and we still have 3 of them right there in a line. Each one is good for almost 7 kilowatts continuous, and each one will peak well over 11 kilowatts for actually quite some time. These are really nice inverters for a 48-volt system because they have a big transformer inside. They can really handle some of those bigger starting loads, and even if you just have one of them and you're occasionally drawing 10 kilowatts, as long as you're not doing it for more than 20 minutes or so, these will actually be able to handle some of those larger loads for a surprising amount of time. We have the 100 amp DC charge controllers there, 2 of them, one on each of those solar arrays. We have the Schneider internet connected gateway there, and then we have this spare inverter and charger over here because we use this to connect to the diesel generator. It was at the time one of the cheapest ways to get a high output 48 volt charger. We have some of the other monitoring equipment here and disconnect stuff over there as well. Schneider has since canceled this lineup because they're trying to focus on more high voltage DC products. If I had to buy these again, I have to say I would probably get the Soul Arc inverters because I think that their integrated nature actually fits us a little bit better because they have charge controllers integrated into the system, and the internet connectivity is definitely better. Schneider's internet connectivity, it's not great, and I suspect it's never going to get better since these guys have been discontinued. So let's go ahead and close that up and talk about the next big change. The next big change is coming over the next few weeks, and that is a new battery bank. Over here we have the Charette Rolls 4KS25P lead acid batteries. These are flooded lead acid batteries. The reason we went with lead acid at the time that we did was honestly cost. These were a lot less expensive than lithium batteries at the time. Also, there was a minor fire risk concern, not with LFP, but with NCM or NMC cells. Those are certainly more fire prone because they actually can start and sustain a fire. LFP batteries will burn. They're significantly more combustible than lead acid batteries, but they won't start a fire in that same way. They can off-gas, so can these, of course. Lead acid batteries, they're often lampooned for releasing hydrogen gas. That technically is possible, but you can also get hydrogen gas coming off of LFP cells. That's not the main thing. The main thing was just cost at the time, and LFP cells have become significantly less expensive. With the LFP bank, we should be going from a cycle efficiency of around 70 to 75% on the lead acid side up to 95% cycle efficiency. And that's going to be a big deal in the winter. We have relatively mild winters here, so storing them in that battery box is not going to be a problem, but gaining 22% more power at night, that's a game changer. According to our logs, about 70% of our power comes directly from the sun to the load during summer months. But during winter months, about 40% is happening at night from the battery pack. So that's really going to improve our ability to sustain those loads without having to reconnect or run the generator. But we're also using more power. For instance, we got ourselves a hot tub. This is normally heated via a heat pump, but we can also heat it via this wood-fired heater over here. You can see that's the smokestack over there. But the firebox is on the small side. You can't remotely start it, of course, and it takes quite some time to actually heat up the hot tub, so we end up using the heat pump most of the time. Then, of course, there's the ongoing Crazy Addition project, which maybe we'll talk about in a future episode, but needless to say, we have been adding extra space to the house, and that is definitely problematic as far as energy consumption goes. To combat all of that, we bought some extra panels, and we stuck them up here on the roof, and on this roof. And yep, we threw caution and even added them to the old roof as well. Solar pricing and solar technology definitely marched along since we did those initial panels down below. Over here on the roof, we have 400-watt bifacial panels on the new roof and on the old roof as well. Bifacial means that these panels are capable of generating power on the back side as well as on the front. Now, clearly that's not doing a whole lot of good on a close-mounted roof install like this, but later we plan on putting some panels over here on the hillside, maybe as a solar fence, something along those lines. Then you'd get a little bit of extra benefit. Because it was cheaper by the pallet, we bought an extra 14.8 kilowatts of panels. We've installed 6.4 kilowatts up here on the roof. And so far in the winter, we've been able to peak out at around 3.4 kilowatts tops, because some of these panels are going to be in shade when some of the other panels are in the sun. And that's why these are all AC connected. It may not be obvious, but the inverter shed is way, way down the hill there. As the cable goes, it's about 1,000 feet from the house to the inverter shed where the batteries are. So it didn't make sense to DC connect the panels. Therefore, each of these panels is connected via an N-phase microinverter to the AC side of the Schneider inverters. And the Schneider inverters are actually kind of cool and handy in that respect. You can actually feed power in the AC side, and the onboard charger will charge the 48-volt batteries when these panels are producing more electricity than the house is consuming. Down here in the half-height basement, we have the AC combiner box for the N-phase microinverters. This is what the microinverters themselves actually look like. You can see the MC4 connector over there and the proprietary AC connector right there in the middle. Now, the IQ7A, these are good for about 345 watts maximum. So theoretically, if you could actually get those panels to produce 400 watts, this would not be able to invert all that. You'd be limited to about 340, 345 watts. I don't think that's too big of a problem because the likelihood of them ever hitting their nameplate capacity is pretty darn low. One thing I did like, though, is that installing the IQ7A microinverters as well as the combiner box was actually pretty easy on a DIY side of things. Enphase actually makes everything available to you that an installer would normally have, so it's pretty easy to do this yourself if you are so inclined. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, to be honest, but this should be able to help support our needs during the day. And indeed, so far in January, 20% of our consumption has actually been on the AC connected panels up on the roof of the house. That's really helped out a lot. And that's probably for the best, because we may have gone a little bit overboard on some of our infrastructure upgrades. According to our calculations, we should be able to squeeze an additional 7 kilowatts of AC connected panels on this portion of the addition whenever we actually get to this portion of the addition, which is probably at least a year, year and a half away. We'll see how the spring goes. So that's it for our solar update. Let me know what you want to hear more about in the future, or if you want to know more details, some of the nitty-gritties on the solar install. We have all that, of course, available. Sound off down there, and hopefully we'll get another video out sometime in March, maybe, something along those lines. See all of you later.